Hello there, hello again, thank you for joining me. I have finally found myself one quiet free hour, and I'm hoping I can fit a video in here, the third video that I promised. We did two videos already the other day. We did the intro to the game, a little bit of a tour around the table. We did a game with Roland's starter deck down here. That all went swimmingly. The previous video with the Roland starter deck, that did run very long. Apologies for that. I wasn't necessarily intending on making a 1 hour plus playthrough. In hindsight, I guess it was always going to be a long playthrough because the intention was for me to really go into detail about everything I was doing, make sure that the viewers understood the symbols on the cards, how the cards interacted. That first turn even, I think it took like 30 minutes or something silly. Any subsequent playthroughs I do of Arkham Horror, the card game, won't be that laborious. I will assume that the viewer has the basics down and they understand how the game plays. I'll play at a much more natural speed. So a game typically takes, I don't know, 15 to 30 minutes from my experience. Maybe the video might run a little bit longer than that just because we are going to build a deck from scratch, so that'll take 5 or 10 minutes at least. Yeah, speaking of, let's jump into that. I did want to just also mention, before I jump into the deck building, I saw a few articles on cardgamedb.com yesterday or the day before. It was a series of 6 articles covering, each article was a different class of these cards. One article was all of the neutral cards, one article was all of the survivor cards, and so on and so forth for the 5 specific classes and the neutral class. A really good read. I was thinking I would link them in the description below, so if you fancy reading that, and I recommend you do, just take a look below the video, and yeah, you can go and take a look at those. With that mentioned, I think it's time to jump in. I haven't decided on an investigator, even though I maybe should have done that, I don't know. I was thinking maybe I would roll a d4 and just go, if we were at 1, we do Wendy, a 2, we do Skids, blah blah blah. Or, alternatively, we could just go from top to bottom. Do Wendy in this video, and then maybe I put up 3 more videos after, which people can watch if they wish to. I enjoy playing as Wendy. Yeah, we'll do that. We're going to just make a custom Wendy deck. And then, assuming it goes well and isn't a complete disaster, or even if it is a disaster, I can, when I next get some free time, I can finish out the set for just purely completionist sake, let's say. So, how do we deck build in this game? Just to briefly cover what we mentioned previously, when you do buy a single core set, once the game is released, you are going to get multiple copies of these neutral cards, but the class-specific cards, Survivor, Rogue, Guardian, you're only going to get 1 of these in the core set, which is why when we played with the Roland deck down here, it was kind of bitty. It was a little bit all over the place. It wasn't very focused. A little bit of everything. The benefit and appeal, I guess, of building a custom deck is that you can really perhaps get an idea of, okay, I want to play this way and focus on these weaknesses or strengths for Wendy, and you can double up if you have the cards available. Because we only get 1 of these per core set, if you do want to be making a custom deck like I'm about to, you will need 2 core sets for a solo game, because you will not, with just the core set, you will not be able to put 2 copies of, say, Leather Coat in your custom deck. You will only be able to put 1. The way I have set this sideboard up is it goes down in a specific order based on the investigators down the side. Each investigator has access to 2 classes. Wendy, if we take a look at the rear of her card, has access, you can see in the deck building options, she has access to survivor cards of level 0 to 5, and she has access to rogue cards of level 0 to 2. And neutral cards level 0 to 5. Do not worry about the levels at this point, because one of the requirements at the start of a campaign, a brand new deck can only include level 0 cards. All of these are level 0 cards. Levels come into play once you start spending victory points which you earn during scenarios, and that's what this pile of cards are. Here we have 4 red cards, 4 green cards, 4 blue, and 2 neutral cards which you spend victory points to acquire. So you might say that Wendy's main class is Survivor because she gets access to 0 to 5 level, and her subclass is Rogue. She only gets access to 0 to 2, but for the purpose of a brand new deck, they're perfectly equal. Let's take a look at Wendy herself. We take a look at her as an investigator. That's not good. Her statistics. What is she good at? What is she bad at? She is brave. Her willpower is 4, above average. She has an average intellect for discovering clues and whatnot. She is absolutely bobbins, rubbish, no good whatsoever at combat. Not a great fighter. Even if you do repeated rolls, you are likely to fail combat checks with Wendy unless you are really pumping skill tokens and modifiers, positive modifiers at a test. However, to counteract that, she is good at hiding and slipping past evil foes. So she has an agility of 4. She has a trait of Drifter, which doesn't necessarily mean much at this point, but may as expansions come out. Her health is a nice balanced 7 and 7, so she doesn't swing in any particular direction for a weakness, like Roland. Really strong in terms of health, 9 health, but that 5 sanity that he has can be a real problem, as we saw in the previous video. 7 and 7 is nice and balanced. You can kind of take the middle road there and just take whatever it throws at you, and you don't have to worry too much unless it accumulates increasingly. As a special rule, what do we have on Wendy? She has that arrow going around in a circle symbol that represents a reaction trigger. So it is something you can do. It doesn't cost you an action. It's something you can do for free, but only after something happens. So what is the something that needs to happen? When you reveal a chaos token, choose and discard 1 card from your hand. Cancel that chaos token and return it to the bag. Reveal a new chaos token, and we can only do that once per test/ability. Pretty good, huh? If we just go through that one more time, we are going to pull chaos tokens out of the bag, obviously. If we do not like the result, we can, if we choose, throw a card away from our hand and put the token back so it is still going to be there, and then draw a token again, hoping for a better result. Caveat there, an obvious caveat, is we need cards in our hand to do this, and we lose them from our hand when we use this ability. So we want to try and make sure that Wendy has a nice healthy stock of options in her hand. Any card draw is going to be good. Any cards that replace themselves are going to be good. So yeah. Her Elder Sign effect is just a +0, so not great. However, if Wendy's amulet is in play, she will automatically succeed. What is Wendy's amulet? It is her unique good card. It is an asset, 2 cost. It has 2 wild symbol icons for committing to skill checks. That in itself is amazing. However, the card itself is amazing. So at a pinch, at an emergency, maybe it'll be in your hand, you've just drawn it, it's too slow to play, you might just use the wild skill icons, but for the most part, Wendy's amulet is going to want to be down in your play area doing its business. That business is, you may play the topmost event in your discard pile as if it were in your hand. So let's say we put 2 copies of, let's find an event. We put 2 copies of this event, Emergency Cash, into our deck, and turns 1, 2, 3, we spend these cards, they go in our discard pile. Later on we draw Wendy's amulet. If we want to, if we need the resources, we can dig into our discard pile, and assuming the Emergency Cash is the topmost event in our discard pile, we can play it as if it was still in our hand. Very strong. As a forced rule, whenever Wendy's amulet is in play, whenever we play an event, it has to be then placed on the bottom of the deck instead of in the discard pile. So ideally there, you don't necessarily play Wendy's amulet immediately. You save it a little while and put some events into your discard pile, and then when you need to access them again, you drop down Wendy's amulet, and then you can start digging in your discard pile for those. However, once Wendy's amulet in play, they're not going to go into your discard pile, they're going to go underneath your deck. And that is it. The only other thing to mention is that Wendy's amulet is an accessory type item. Did I go into accessory types? You may only have one accessory type. I think I mentioned it. They're called slots in the game. Here's the rules reference. Slots, slots, slots. Here. So you can see you allow one accessory slot, one body slot. You can only have one ally. You can have 2 hand icons equipped, and you can have 2 arcane icons equipped, shown down there. So yeah, Wendy's amulet is pretty good. It requires a bit of playing around. It's the kind of item which is very cool. It can be a little bit tricky to use at first. It's kind of specific, and it also, maybe you could argue, it requires specific timing for when you pull it and when you use it and whether you have the resources. It's a nice thinking kind of card. When do I play this? Do I play this now? Is this the right time to play it? Do I wait a turn, play it next turn? Which I enjoy. Let's move on to her bad card. It is a weakness, a treachery. As a revelation effect, so it happens immediately as soon as you draw it. It never actually goes into your hand, it just happens as soon as it leaves the top of the deck. As a revelation, take 2 direct horror and remove all cards in your discard pile from the game. This is 2 direct horror, sucks for sure. And then if you have, for example, been saving up some nice little events that you want to reuse using the amulet, before you pull the amulet, or even when you have it in hand but before you play the amulet, Abandoned and Alone pops up and suddenly your discard pile has disappeared. One to watch out for. When you are drawing cards, when you are drawing a card at the end of the turn, we want to get very careful if she starts hovering around 4 or 5 sanity, especially 5, because we could just draw 1 card and immediately go insane. Should we build a deck? Did I finish what I was saying? Yeah, I was mentioning that because Wendy is a survivor and a rogue, sorry, I'm going back like 10 minutes now for something I was talking. Because Wendy is a survivor and a rogue, the survivor cards have been placed here, the rogue cards have been placed here. Now if we move on to Skids, Skids' main class is a rogue and his subclass is guardian. So whereas this is on the bottom for Wendy, it's at the top for Skids, and his subclass is down here, and so on and so forth, which is why survivor cards are duplicated at the top as Wendy's main class, and at the bottom again for Agnes's subclass. There is this space in the middle, so if we grab these neutral cards, plop them down, we zoom in now, this is Wendy's card options. This is all she can include in her deck in the game. The way I do this, I grab a copy of this token and I just start dropping them down. So flashlight, it gets 3 supplies, battery power I suppose, and we can spend a supply as an action and make an investigate on the location. Shroud is reduced by 2, so it's good for that cellar area. It starts with a shroud value of 4. If you have a flashlight with you, it's only a shroud value of 2. Really quite useful. I'm going to put at least 1 of these in. Tempted to put 2. I will put 2. We're going to put 2 of these in our deck, but if we hit our 30 card limit, I might take 1 of these away. With Wendy, we do want a healthy supply of events, and emergency cash is arguably the best source of resources in the game. We're going to put 2 of these in our deck. In fact, let's just look at events. Which events do we want? These are split up. It's slightly subtle. You see there's a slightly bigger gap here. These are all assets. then we have 3 events, and then a skill at the end. And that's the same for every class. They're all split up that way. So these 3 are the events that we play with, and there's also the events in the Rogue deck. If we take a look at Lucky, it is a fast card, so it does not cost an action. It costs 1. Play when you would fail a skill test. So it is a reactive card, I guess you could say. You can actually wait until you fail a skill test, and then if you fail it, then go, okay, now I want to play my Lucky card. Whereas for the most part, when you're influencing a skill check, you are playing it before you pull the Chaos token out. With Lucky, you can actually wait, see what you get, see if you can deal with it. If not, you can play Lucky. And what does it do? Play when you would fail a skill test, get a +2 modifier to your skill value for that test. So if it makes a difference, you can play it. If the +2 doesn't help at all, you don't have to play it. The next event, oh, let's go back here. Oops. We're putting 2 of those in our deck. I think that's just a curiosity. I think the reason that goes underneath sometimes, it happens occasionally. I think it's because this sideboard isn't perfectly horizontal, so the rendering of the collision of this board gets a bit wonky. It's easily fixed though. Let's look at this other event. It is also really good. It has 2 investigation icons at the top. That's excellent. Costs 2, but the actual text is fast again. Play after you fail a skill test by 2 or less while investigating, and then discover 2 clues in your location. That's amazing. Not discover the clue that you failed to discover, but actually discover an extra clue in addition. This card is, you want to fail. If you have this in your hand and you have resources to spare, you want to fail an investigation check perhaps by 2 or less, so that you can then just gobble up both clues at the location. Adding 2 of these, no, we want to add these because these are just nice to have in your hand. We don't want to be digging. If you put 1 of these in the deck, then there's a chance that you're never going to see it. By putting 2 in it, it just increases the chances that you're going to be able to make use of it. And then the final Survivor event is 5 cost. It's expensive. Cunning Distraction. You make an evade action, pay your 5 resources, and then you get to automatically, without making any rolls, evade all enemies at your location. So they would all be exhausted, tapped, they would all be moved out of your threat area, and I suppose, let me just read this again. I'm trying to think of this if there were, say, 2 investigators at a location and each one had an enemy in their threat area. No, I think to evade it has to be in your threat area, yeah. So it wouldn't exhaust a monster that was in another investigator's threat area at your location, no. So any monsters that are in your threat area, you automatically evade all of them. They immediately exhaust, they immediately get put back on the location card, and you're free to do what you like without opportunity attacks ruining your day. We're not going to take this, well, as the skill icons, it does have this wild icon, so that is very useful. It has a willpower icon. Again, I'm going to drop a token on it, just 1, and we can come back, and this will be the first one maybe that we cut from the deck if we go over our 30 limit. Let's take a look at the rogue events. 2 cost, 2 cost, and 3 cost. Elusive has icon for intellect and an icon for agility. Agility is going to be very good for Wendy. We want as many ways to guarantee a successful evasion. If we start drawing monsters from the encounter deck, Wendy's in for a bad time unless she is able to evade them. She's not going to be able to fight them, for the most part, with a few exceptions. Fast for elusive. Play only during your turn. Disengage from each enemy engaged with you and move to a revealed location with no enemies. A couple of interesting things about this. You are not evading them, you are just disengaging from them. So if you imagine the board state, you have a monster in your threat area. When you evade that monster, it exhausts. You tap it 90 degrees and put it on the room. That means it can't do anything in the enemy phase. Disengaging doesn't exhaust the enemy. You move it away from your threat area, but it's still active in the enemy phase. So if it is, for example, a hunter type, it is going to move next turn, possibly engage with you immediately again and then attack you. If it's not a hunter type, then this is a better card. If it isn't a hunter type, actually, then yes, the way the enemy phase works is if there is an unexhausted enemy at the location during the enemy phase, they don't engage you until the cleanup phase after, which can be important. Elusive would allow you to avoid being attacked by a non-hunter enemy for one turn. The other important or interesting thing about this is it just says a revealed location with no enemies, not an adjacent revealed location, any revealed location. So you could be in the cellar with you could be in the cellar with a bunch of monsters, and for whatever reason you could use elusive and jump straight to a revealed attic, assuming there are no monsters in there, bypassing the extra step of going through the hallway. Do we add this? Let's come back to elusive. Sneak attack is amazing. It deals 2 damage to an exhausted enemy at your location for a cost of 2. That's one of Wendy's strongest ways to defeat enemies. She has a high agility, so she can evade them, and then she throws down a sneak attack and does the 2 damage. We're going to auto include 2 of these, and backstab, 3 cost. It's a fight action, but it uses her agility stat rather than her combat stat, and it deals +2 damage. Amazing. Beautiful. They are our events. Actually, I've added the flashlight. So we have already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Perhaps too many events for a deck. Well, actually, no, 11, including that. I think it might be too many events. We're going to avoid elusive, mainly because if we just throw every event available into the deck, it's not going to be a very well-rounded or balanced thing. What mandatory cards do we want to add in? I think it's worth adding in the 2 perceptions, plus skill checks for books. Getting clues is the most important thing in the game. That's how you win. So having these book checks just to guarantee clues is really nice. We don't necessarily need the overpower. I think I'm torn between putting in manual dexterity specifically for agility checks, because then it replaces itself if this test is successful, draw 1 card, and then unexpected courage because it's wild and it's just very, very versatile. As it stands, I'm going to do 1 of each right now and leave it there. Yeah, that looks good to me. Weapons, what do we give for a weapon? Well, the weapon that we give is... Oops-a-daisy. This little fella, the baseball bat. So it's fight. It does give her +2 combat, which takes her combat from terrible, 1, to average, 3, and it deals +1 damage. There's some special rules for if a skull or a tentacles symbol is revealed, and the baseball bat is going to snap in half. But sure, let's include 2 baseball bats. Let's take a look at what else we might want. I think because it's 0 cost and it's basically +2 health that we can drop onto leather coat, I like the idea of putting 2 of these in. It saves us resources and it just gives us that survivability on the health side of things. Here we have some more digging in our discard pile with scavenging. We can play this for 1 asset and then we just have the ability to scavenge. And then as a reaction trigger, after you successfully investigate by 2 or more, you can exhaust scavenging and choose an item card in your discard pile and add it to your hand. So there's a couple of requirements there. You have to successfully investigate by 2 or more. You can only do it once per turn. Is it worth including? Let's keep looking around, see what cards we definitely want to add. Spend 1 resource. So this is one of those cards that gives you buffs based on paying resources, but you have to pay it to your play area first. This is willpower and agility. The agility is very nice. Willpower, we have a strong willpower already. Not necessarily taken with Dig Deep. Let's take a look at what the rogue one is. Where are you? Hard Knocks. Take a drink. Strong drink. And this is combat and agility. That's more useful if we have an unlucky combat that we have to do and we're sitting on a few resources. We can use those in a pinch. So I think, yes, we can. And it has an agility icon that we can commit if we want to make sure we evade. Same thing. Let's throw in burglary, because it's a nice way to gain resources. You can do it once per turn as an investigate action. You don't gain clues if you're successful. It takes the same shroud value. You don't gain clues if you're successful, but you can easily gain 3 resources that way. I think we just add the 1 there. After you evade an enemy, exhaust pickpocketing and draw 1 card. I like this card. It only really pays for itself if you run across enemies. So is it worth it? Given the scenario we're playing, how many enemies are we likely to hit? Not 100% sure. Let's throw 1 in. So let's count up our tokens. Where are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. We still have 6 cards to add. Let's take a look at the skill cards for the classes. Survival Instinct. If this skill test is successful during an evasion attempt, the invading investigator may immediately disengage from each other enemy engaged and move to a connecting location. Not interested in that. Opportunist. I'm not interested in this either, necessarily, because it requires you to succeed by 3 or more for its benefit to come through. However, it's a wild +1, which can make all the difference. Just going from requiring a -1 or better from the chaos bag to a -2 or better. No, the other way around. From, say, your difficulty, I need -1 or better. Bumping it up to -2 or better can be the same thing. Yeah, I think we're going to add 2, 1. No, we're going to add 2 of these. I'd like the skill icon, the wild skill icon. We're going to add another burglary. And we're going to add 2 rabbit's feet. It's an asset, it's the wild skill icon. And once you play it for 1, you can then, as a free action, after you fail any skill test, exhaust Rabbit's Foot and draw a card. It's not amazing, but it is a way to... It's slightly versatile. No, I'm not going to take 2. I'm just going to take the 1. And we'll take 1 stray... No, we'll actually take 2 stray cats. Because that is very strong for Wendy. I actually completely forgot that stray cat was there. Only costs 1. Gives you an agility icon. And as a free action, this lightning is a free action. It doesn't cost one of your valuable actions. You can discard the card after you've played it and automatically evade a non-elite enemy at your location. And the other option is it has 1 health, so if you take a damage, if you want to, you can just plop that damage on the cat instead, and meow, off it goes. Let's, I've lost track already. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 13, 15, 17, 18, 19, 21, 23, 25, 27, 28, 29, 30. That is a deck of 30 cards. So the way I do it, I would copy this, paste 2 here, and just, talk amongst yourselves for a moment whilst I go through this laborious thing. I actually thought this deck building section would only take 5 minutes in my optimism. It's taking a little bit longer, and I don't want to make another hour-long video because it can be a bit too much to ask of the viewer. So what I will do here is I will put a cut in just after I've done this, and then we'll jump straight into the next game in another video. We can all get a drink, we can all go to the loo and get ready for this mess of a deck, and let's see how it plays. Let's finish by adding a basic weakness. Now, the rules, as far as I can tell, the rules do not specify whether you can or should not look at this card right now. I actually don't think the rules state that you are forbidden from looking at it. I play by just finding out what it is. The reason being, when you're searching through the deck, as Wendy's going to do, or any of those kind of things, it's perfectly... imagine you've got the physical deck in your hand, you're searching for a card, you can see the weakness in your deck. It's kind of messy to have a rule that you cannot look at it, but then you might find out about it through some other effect later on. That to me feels messy. I prefer having a house rule, even if that's what it is, of when you draw your random weakness, you get to see it, and then there's no finding something out accidentally later on through no fault of your own, which just feels weird. So when I draw the random weakness, I take a look at what it is. And again, there's nothing in the rulebook, I believe, that states you don't do that. It just hasn't specified one way or another. Personal preference, I guess it boils down to. What have we drawn? Silver Twilight Acolyte. It's an enemy with 2, 3, 3, 2 combat, 3 health, annoyingly, and 3 agility, so not exactly easy to evade. It preys on the person whose card this is, so it's only going to attack Wendy. Not a problem in a solo game. It is a hunter, so it will follow you around. You cannot run away from it and just leave it in the cellar, for example. It's going to come after you. And then the force text. After Silver Twilight Acolyte attacks, you place 1 doom on the current agenda, which is terrible. It doesn't do much damage, just no horror and just 1 health damage. But still, that doom problem is you don't want to be advancing the agenda so much. It's an interesting one. I hope we don't see that, because that may ruin everyone's day. So there's 31 cards. We take a copy of the amulet. We take a copy of the weakness. We have a deck of 33. Let's pop it down here. Give it a shuffle. I will, in the interim, between this video and the next, I'll throw the Scenario 1 cards on the board, and when I come back, we will get started. Thank you for watching me. I hope I'll see you in just a moment. Yeah, bye-bye.